Today's guest is Kelly Mackin. She's the author of a new book coming out called Work Life Well Lived. She's also the co founder and CEO of Motives Met platform. Kelly's journey from ill being to well being at work ignited her passion to help people create health and happiness in their lives through a unique blend of skills. Kelly's mission is to create a human work world, and she built Motives Met to achieve that dream for life well lived for all. When asked about her proudest moments, Kelly will tell you it was standing at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa and the Mount Everest base camp. She hails from sunny San Diego. Welcome to the show, Kelly Mackin. I've got a question for you. Who's the person you're being? Are you satisfied? It's okay. This is a judge-free zone, and it's exactly why I started the show. Welcome to Be the Person, a podcast for the brave and the curious who are ready to explore who they are fully created to be. I'm your host, Randall, the adventurous one leading this investigative journey of transformation. By delving into topics and asking unexpected questions, we will discover the keys for unlocking our true potential and being our best selves today. You may be surprised by what you find when you let go of fear in order to discover the answers of becoming the person you were made to be. Welcome to Be the Person podcast. I'm super excited to have my guest on today, Kelly Mackin. She is the CEO and co-founder of Motives Met platform. She also has written a book called Work Life Well Lived. I got a sneak peek at the book, and I also got to do the assessment. This is a huge topic for me because I always want to create a great place for people to work. And I've also been on the other side of that as an employee to have a great place to work. So I'm super excited. Welcome to the show, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me, Anne. I'm so excited to chat today.
Yeah. Well, let's just kick it off and let's tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get where you are today?
Well, I have a very strong passion and really dedication towards helping people create well being in their lives, both in and outside of work. And the journey to arrive where I am today, where I'm CEO of the Motives Met platform that really empowers people to have their best work life and workplace with true well being, came from my journey as a child, actually seeing my mom and witnessing her experience in her career. I saw a really interesting experience with her in the sense it was two extremes. In the beginning of her career, work really lit her up, and she got such happiness and joy and confidence and purpose from what she did. But then when her company got bought out, everything changed and none of her needs were being met. And it actually got to the point where she was physically ill from work to the point where the stress was just unmanageable. And that was very, very tough to see as a kid growing up. And unfortunately, I followed right in those footsteps because I kind of had developed the belief system that this is how work is. And you have to toughen up. And maybe once you've given enough blood, sweat, and tears, then you can earn well being. You can earn happiness in your career. So it took me entering a very toxic work environment for years and really hitting some lows in my life that made me wake up and go, this is insanity. Everybody deserves to be healthy at work. And work is such a significant part of our life. We spend a third of our lives at work. So work life is life. If you're having ill being in your work life, that is going to bleed into your life outside of work, into your relationships, into your loved ones. And so that was really my wake up call that set me on a journey towards well being. And I moved from Chicago to California and really changed my life from there. And I started diving deeper into quantitative research. So I'm really interested in human behavior, why people do what they do, why sometimes we don't do what we want to do. And that research curiosity led me to really want to understand things on a deeper level. So that kind of got me to psychology and cognitive behavioral therapy and brain training, really kind of becoming a student of how our brain works and how that influences our decisions and our mindsets and our emotions, and really developing frameworks and tools to help people. And so that brought me into coaching. I became a meditation teacher and really used mindfulness practices to help people in their lives. But what I saw in my coaching business was that a lot of people were struggling with stress and burnout and unhappiness in their work, in their career, in their job. And so I really started kind of focusing there. And then the work well being movement became a thing. And it was amazing because I was like, well being and work are being used in the same sentence. This was not the case not that long ago. And this was still pre pandemic. This was around 2017, 2018. So me and my mom actually and our team went, wow, this is amazing that we're talking about this stuff and it's becoming a hot topic. But the problem is ill being at work is still at an all-time high. And again, this is before the pandemic happened. So our research curiosities led us to like, well, why? Why is that happening? And that's the path that really set us to create our whole platform today that, we didn't really guess a few years ago that's where we'd be, but that's really where it led us.
I love that because you're right. Work plays such a huge role in our lives, whether we like it or we don't like it. Just that feeling of going in. Do you love walking in the door or is it something that you dread?
Absolutely. It's a huge part of our lives.
Yeah. Well, we're going to jump in and talk a lot about the platform, the book, your tools. I love taking that. But before we go there, I have a few like personal things out of your bio. One of my favorite questions to ask people is their proudest moment. And you shared it in your bio, um, hiking to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro and also to the base camp of Everest. Those are two like amazing, outstanding accomplishments.
Thank you. Yeah, they were very cool, very surreal, very cool moments in my life for sure. They
Yeah.
will be tough to beat.
What made you decide to do those?
Well, I'd always wanted to do like an epic hike. And it was so random because at that point in my life, I still was very like city girl, Chicago, wearing high heels, pounding the pavement. But then when I moved to California, I really started to ignite that love in myself for nature and being outdoors and hiking. And then I went through a really tough time in life. It's kind of like my whole life was crumbling around me. One of the biggest things, I was engaged, and 6 weeks before the wedding, he called it off. And it was the best thing ever because I'm so happy we didn't end up getting married, but it was still very difficult to go through on top of other tough things in life. And I really wanted to not self-sabotage instead of, drinking margaritas on a beach somewhere endlessly, which a lot of my friends were like, that's what you should be doing. I was like, no, I'm going to do something epic. I'm going to grow. I'm going to use this to feel something positive in my life. And then I was like, all right, we're going to do that epic hike right now. And one of the first things I came across was the hike to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. And Kili is one of the 7 highest summits in the world. They call it the roof of Africa. It's 19,341 feet. So it is a big mountain to climb. And I only had about 3.5 months to train for it, but the hike was going to be on over New Year's. So I would be standing on the roof of Africa New Year's Day to see the sunrise and really start my year in the way I wanted to. And so that was kind of the big driver for Kilimanjaro. And then I kind of got the hiking love from that and ended up doing Everest Base Camp the next year.
Okay. And how high is Everest Base Camp?
Ooh, I think it's more around 15,000 feet. So it's actually a little bit lower than Kilimanjaro.
But still really hard. The part that freaks me out is the picture of the bridge that you see.
There are a lot of those suspension bridges going throughout Everest Base Camp for sure. They're sturdier than they look, I have to say. They're sturdier than they look, but they are high.
Okay. My daughter always points out because I'm afraid of heights. And she's like, do you think you could hike there? And I was like, I don't know because of those bridges. And looking down, I'm like, I'm not positive I could get across that thing.
And I have faith in you. I'm telling you, you can do it. And it's a lot sturdier when you're there and it's in front of you than it looks in pictures.
Okay. Well, amazing. Two amazing accomplishments. And you also teach meditation. So I was super excited because February, I'm a big goal person monthly. And February was really learn to meditate. I tore my hamstring, so I can't work out like I normally do. So I'm like, you know what? This is the perfect time to really dive into meditation. I felt like I needed a reset for my nervous system, but it was challenging for me. And now we're filming on February 28th, and I have to say it's something that I really am enjoying, but it took me a while to get there. Do you find that with people?
Oh, yeah, all the time. It took me a while to get there. And I'll be honest, I still am not always there. There are
Right.
days where I go to meditate where I don't wanna do it, it doesn't sound great, and the whole time it is hard. So I think I love sharing that with people because I think sometimes there's a misconception that meditation is all around feeling calm and bliss, and that's actually really not what it's about. It's very much more like going to the gym where, every time you go to the gym, you don't usually regret going. And sometimes it's an easy workout. You're on top of the world and you're like, this is great. Sometimes you're like, this weight feels real heavy today. And I really had to drag myself to get to the gym, but you still got the benefits from going and you still made yourself stronger. And meditation is just going to the gym for your mind. Every time your mind wanders and you bring it back, you're doing a bicep curl. So your mind is supposed to wander. It's supposed to be hard. Just the way going to the gym is not supposed to be easy, where you don't break a sweat and it's not hard at all.
Yeah. Well, I'm still working on it, but I'm going to continue in March. I'm excited about that. And I've started just super short, like 5 to 10 minute meditations. But those, you're right. I think we have to start somewhere about probably like three bicep curls for me as far as meditation goes and add on to it.
Yeah. No, I love that mindset because I think mindfulness is a mindset and meditation is the way to help you achieve it. So, the way I very much have viewed meditation is it's just helping me train my brain to be the CEO of my mind outside the meditation. It's not to be a good meditator, it's just to be a stronger in my overall life. So, just doing it 5 or 10 minutes, just even learning the tools and doing it twice a week, but having those tools to come back to and that different awareness and intention in your life is extremely powerful. So you don't need to meditate half hour every day, twice a day, every day to get the benefits.
Yeah. I love that. I love that permission as well. Um, and I think you're right because for me, being where my feet are some days can be challenging. Like my mind goes 14 different places because I'm involved in a lot of different things. But really, one of my goals this year is again to be where my feet are. And I think it's a tool that's really going to help me.
I love that. Be where my feet are. That is a good saying. I love that. Yeah.
Because I can be a lot of places that my feet are not.
You are not alone. We all struggle with that. So,
Yes. Well, you have a new book coming out in April, and I'm super thankful. You gave me a sneak peek, and I love it. I'm also a highlighter, though, so I can't wait to get like the paper copy of it. I read it online, but it's called Work Life Well Lived. And you talked a little bit about the story of your mom, but what made you really decide to? It's one thing to be passionate about something; it's another thing to decide I'm going to be an author and really pour all this time and energy into it. What really made you decide to do that?
well, we consider ourselves at Motives Met disruptors. We have
Mhm.
ruffled a few feathers in telling people how we've approached health and happiness at work is wrong. And how a lot of thought leaders, CEOs, big influencers on social media, how they tell you should do it is also wrong. And we really felt like this research we've done around how to actually thrive at work, how to have a thriving culture and a people first company, that research deserved a book
Mhm.
because it's a whole paradigm shift. It's a whole different mindset and approach to health and happiness at work. And a book is such a great way to really take a huge concept like that, that's really a big mindset shift, and bring it to life and get it to more people. because our mission really is to create a work world where we're human first and where well-being is a right and not a privilege. So that's our big mission and impact. And so, we felt the best way to really make that greatest impact, to bring people in to the work well-being movement, was to do a book.
I love that. And tell me a little bit because, again, I run a company. I know how hard culture is to set. It's one of the things that I think is most important in a company, along with, of course, our employees and wanting them to love their job and be happy and be um, happy in and outside of work. But culture can be tricky. And you said a lot of times companies, they don't do it correctly. What is one of the big things that you see companies not do correctly?
Well, first, I want to piggyback off what you said. It is tough. And that
Mhm.
is one of the things that we really hit home with people is we're not telling you it's going to be perfect and we're not telling you it's going to be easy. Let's take a real practical approach. Let's give real tools to leaders to make it easier because it is really hard. So cuz some people kind of want to paint the picture it's so easy and just do these three things and everything's going to be great. And that's a lie, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of things that can go wrong, but one of the things that stands out is that leaders can take a one size fits none approach, taking a real cookie cutter. Again, these are the three things I'm going to focus on. These are the five things instead of getting to know their people as individual human beings because well being is personal. That one size fits all approach does not work for motivating employees, for making them happy, and for really making them feel like you do care to just get to know them and what matters to them at work and how that's really different from someone else on your team. So I know we'll kind of get into talking more about it, but we identified 28 different human needs that people have at work. But what matters most to me is not going to be what matters most to you. So, I had a manager actually, it was like 2 weeks ago. We had a great conversation and he was sharing how he focuses on growth with his team. He's like, I really make sure I talk to them about their advancement opportunities and where they want to grow and their goals. And I do that every quarter. And I was like, that's freaking awesome. That is great. It really is. What
Yeah.
about the other 27 needs? Because growth is one. And someone might be in a growth spurt. Someone might have been in a growth spurt a year ago, and they might need to be focusing on work they're more passionate about. They might need a little bit more flexibility. They might need some more peer connection at work and social interaction. So you can talk to them all day long about growth, but if that's not what they need, you are missing the mark in a huge way.
Yeah. It was super eye opening for me. And again, like I absolutely want to take that approach of getting to know our people, figuring out why they're there. How do I help you get to the next level? What's important to you right now? Because in my career over, gosh, 30 years, it has been sometimes, you're right, it's been flexibility when I had young kids at work. And other times it might have been growth. And those change depend on seasons, depending on people. And I love doing the test and then, or the assessment, and then looking at my five and really saying, gosh, these are important to me, but how often do I think they should just be, important to my employees too, instead of really looking at what's important to them?
Yeah, and you are not alone there. And I wholeheartedly admit this about myself. I can look back in my career and think about times where I did not embrace what we call motive diversity, right? There are these 28 motives. And I kind of thought, what I think is important is what you should think is important. This is number one. You should care about this. And we can do it really subconsciously. We don't even always realize we're doing it, but there can be a lot of judgment around these different needs. There can be a lot of misunderstanding. There can just be like, hey, I'm just not thinking about it. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm just not even paying attention to it. So it can be really tough to kind of bring that open mindedness in the sense we kind of have tunnel vision and there's that disconnect that we just assume what we need is what others need and how we feel is how they feel.
Mhm. If you're okay with it, I would love to jump into my assessment. I'm always super tactical of like I learn by example. And so I would love for you to share. I know you said there's 28 and you do it and you get a top five. And just share a little bit about those top 5 of mine and maybe a little bit about each of those traits.
Sure. Yeah, so there's 28 motives in total. That's what our research found. When we really went, okay, well, what is work well-being? Because the world doesn't really seem to know. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of BS out there. We identified 28 of these needs that fall into 10 overarching domains, as we call them. So, for example, in the freedom domain, there's the autonomy motive, flexibility, and free expression. In the balance domain, there's work life harmony and a balanced pace. We have growth as a motive and success and pure connection and fun. So there are all these different needs. But what we also discovered is again, everybody is going to need different things at different times in their work life. Some of these needs might be really unimportant to someone. Some might still be important, but they're not a must have, they're a nice to have. And then we all have these five that really rise to the top and are the biggest drivers and biggest kind of influencers on what we find to be most important at work. And that's why we built the human needs assessment so that people could really identify what are those big drivers because we all have blind spots and we're all busy and we're not paying attention to this stuff. So the assessment really opens the door to that. So it was really fun. You took the assessment. I love learning about people's motives and chatting about them because we all have what we call a motive story, why these are so important to us, what they mean to us, which ones we struggle with, which ones we're grateful for. So your five are passion, purpose, growth, peer connection, and company appreciation. So passion and purpose are both in the meaning domain. And from just talking to you, even before we jumped onto the recording, I can tell you care so much about the impact you're making for your employees and in your life. In the fitness industry with this podcast, doing work that you feel is meaningful and having a positive impact on others is a huge vital part of your ability to be most happy and healthy at work. Peer conne- Peer connection is also one of your top five. And I also mentioned, like, God, I can see you're such a people person. And, you were saying that too of like, I really love interacting with people and I love this podcast because I'm able to talk and have these conversations I wouldn't have otherwise. And that is one of the things we see is that, especially in the more remote world we live in now, that peer connection and things like fun and belonging, which is another motive that's kind of in this domain, can really be a struggle for people because there is less of that social interaction. And so having creative ways and new ways to get that need met at work is really important. Company appreciation makes a ton of sense. Like you said, you care about your employees feeling appreciated at work. So, it's interesting. Sometimes a motive can rise to the top because it's just something we really value a lot. Like for me, trustworthy leadership is a top motive. And it's less about me needing trust in leaders at my company because I am the leader. For me, it's more, oh my God, I want to be a trusted leader. I care so much about creating a culture where this is strong because I think it's so important. So if I had to guess, from not going too depth into our conversation, just based on what you've talked about of the culture you want to create, you want your employees, you want the people around you who support you at work to feel like they're valued, to feel they're significant, to feel you appreciate them.
Yeah,
And then
definitely.
yeah, and then growth is, your last motive. So, it's really interesting to think about what is most like this year, for example, what is your biggest goal? What are you working towards the most? And that's what I really love when you take our assessment, we make it actionable. In your report, you get all sorts of questions and ideas and tips. And we help you put together your action plan and your story so that you can reflect on a motive like growth. And we have some great questions like, well, what is, if I was going to think of like, what are the three biggest obstacles to me wanting to grow in the way I want to grow this year at work? What are they?
Mm.
So I love just taking these motives and really reflecting on them in ways that we just probably aren't doing otherwise in our everyday life.
I agree. And I love it because it was written, I feel like both for employees and also leaders, because there's a lot of 20-year-olds that work at Orange Theory at our studios. And what I find is they're really trying to figure out who they are, what's important to them. And it's a learning curve, I feel like, at your 20s. It took me all the way into my 40s to learn this. And so I think just saying it, you help articulate, yes, this is things that are important to me. And then for their managers or leaders to have that as a blueprint for what is important to them is so helpful, really, on both sides.
It is, it's helpful because it helps bring their awareness up as well, because we say you have to advocate for your own needs at work. A lot of times we'll talk to people and they'll be like, "I'm unhappy at work. I'm miserable. I don't really like it here." But they don't really know why, and they're not really able to articulate it and thus make change. And that's not great for anybody, because then they're just going to walk out the door. Where instead it would have been much better to have the conversation and say, "Hey, this needs weak for me. I think we could do a few things to make it stronger. Can we do that? And by the way, this needs to going great. I feel like I'm growing here a lot. I'm on the path to my future success I want. So thank you for that." But those conversations just aren't really happening, which is tough. And so we very much felt that we needed to create a pathway and a tool that is for everybody. And that's really kind of how I've broken out the book, because our research shows that well being at work is co created. The degree that any of these needs are going to be strong or weak is going to be dependent on everybody, whether it's work life harmony or fairness or security or flexibility or autonomy. Everybody's going to affect these things. So we say well being at work happens when people show up for themselves and one another in meaningful ways to keep these motives healthy. So it's really important that everybody kind of walks what we call our well-being pathway, our no BS pathway to well-being together. And so in the book, that's really the way I approached it. Is it starts with you as an individual. Even if you're a leader, it starts with your motives. It starts with your well-being. You have to take care of that first. And then I move into the interpersonal relationships. Okay, how can you support others? How can they support you? How can we get to have more meaningful work relationships with less friction? And then lastly, now let's talk about leaders and culture. And I always drive home, you don't need a formal leadership title to be a leader, to make change on your team, to suggest ideas to your leader, to make an impact on culture. So it's really great to have that understanding and also know more about, like, what do I want to be looking for in a leader? In my next job, what do I want to make sure that they understand? So it's really helpful to kind of understand that piece of it as well.
Oh, for sure. Because I think that's so important. You work for one boss that you don't necessarily have the same values, the same ideas about. And that becomes a really important question on your next job. My favorite company for clean protein is by far and away ButcherBox. Everything they sell is humanely raised, no antibiotics. You get to choose what comes in your box, whether it's beef, chicken, pork, seafood, and you get to choose all of the cuts you want, as well as how often you want. It's shipped direct to your house, so every time I go to cook dinner, there's meat in my freezer. They're giving our audience $50 off the first box. See the link in the show notes. And I love how you say that it's both sides, because a lot of times I think as leaders, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get it right. And then as I see my younger staff, of just giving them a voice to say, if you don't like something, please share with me. I'm at a different stage in life. I'm at a different age. I don't see what you see. And I want that. I love when employees bring that up to me to say, hey, if we could fix this or do this, or I need this. I mean, as an owner, if I can do it and keep them, I absolutely will. Not that I can do it every time, but if I can, I will.
No,
So
that's huge. That's so important, because one of the pieces of feedback we get a lot is, when I bring this to my team or to my company, it helps people have compassion for you. It helps people have compassion for leaders and how hard this is. Hey, there's 28 needs. And by the way, these needs are going to hold friction with each other, both internally and externally. I coach someone, for example, who has work life harmony as a top motive and future success. How are they going to be at the dinner table every night with their family and be at this huge breaking point in their company? That's tough. It's not both going to be equally thriving. That's the reality. You're going to have to make compromises and tough decisions. And on a team, it could be the same thing to understand, hey, everybody's driven in different ways, and sometimes our needs can clash. So it's not about perfection. But hey, if we can all care about these 28, if we can all support each other, knowing what matters most, if we can get it out in the open to talk about, then we can problem solve where we need to problem solve. And then we can support where we can support. And it might not be everything, like you're saying. This isn't saying, hey, we're going to be able to make everything perfect for all of these motives. But just knowing that you care enough to try in and of itself goes a huge way with employees. Just saying, hey, I care about getting to know you. Let's take a half hour, talk about what matters most to you at work and why. You're going to learn new things about this person you may never have learned about them without having that conversation. And that alone is so impactful for the relationship you have with your employees and their trust and belief in you as a leader.
Yeah. And to be honest, this is challenging me because that's something I used to do every year, probably twice a year, is sit down with every employee in our company and talk to them. And to be honest, I haven't done that recently. And I'm like, you know what? Those are some of my absolute favorite conversations to learn about people and just what's important to them and just, showing that I haven't done that and I'm going to do that. It's one of the most important things as a leader I think I need to do is just such a great, valuable takeaway. Plus, I'm going to be looking for these other, like what's important to you, thinking in these categories that you've created. It's just such an incredible tool for leaders.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really great to facilitate those conversations because, again, I have empathy for leaders. It's tough when they're like, hey, have compassion for your employees, care about their well being, take care of their mental health, get to know them as humans. And you're like, well, I have 10 projects to get done today. How am I supposed to, how should I structure this conversation? What should I say? It's not super easy. So when you have a tool like this, it just opens the door to make it not only easier, but also more effective. Because sure, asking someone like, are you happy here? How are things going? That's better than nothing for sure. But being able, when you ask better questions, you're going to get better answers. So when you know what matters to someone, you can ask them questions that really get deeper about that need, about who they are as a person, about how they can perform better at work. And that's not going to happen from just asking that broad question, how are you feeling here? And it's much easier to be brave and be vulnerable when you're asking those specific questions. It invites a level of vulnerability and psychological safety that isn't quite there sometimes with those just kind of broader questions that feel like, oh, do you really want to know? I'm not so sure.
Mhm. Absolutely. Because I think on the flip side, one of the quotes that I really love from your book was 52% of employees exit their company and said there could have been something done to keep them, but the conversation never happened. So we have people walking out our door and it's expensive. It's not great for the company culture because we have to come in, train somebody new, but nothing was ever said. And I think it goes again, like you said, both ways on the employee speaking up, but the leader taking time to listen and asking those questions.
Yeah, carving out that time, even when it feels like there's a lot going on, it is so much smarter from a time and dollars and resources standpoint to have those conversations and not be dealing with people walking out the door and what that mental, emotional, financial cost of turnover is. And yeah, our research showed in the last year, 33% of people said, no one ever had a conversation with me, no leader about my job satisfaction, and 31% said only once. So it's better to know, hey, we could do these few things and keep this person, or hey, if this person's maybe they have the passion motive like you, and hey, they're most passionate about being a country singer or going to be an author, or say, hey, that's not, I can't do anything about that, but I can support you and I can go, hey, I'm championing, being your champion and advocate. And if it's not going to work out for you to be here, then that's cool. And I know sooner. That's fantastic. It's a win win conversation. But, again, that there tends to be silence around these needs at work, and that silence costs us big time in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. It's not like the silence is making it go away. It almost makes the person end up going away.
Yeah, it's still there underneath whether we want to deal with it or not. So dealing with it's a better way to go.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's been a saying that's always stuck with me, and I don't even know where I heard it or who said it, but it was just that your health, as a manager, you have more impact on your employees' health than their doctor. And that has always stood with me because one, I think it's so true. I remember when I worked for great managers, and then I had one manager that was really, really challenging of just my health in those different time frames. And just the impact that we have, especially owning Orange Theory. Like we're a place people come to get healthy, but yet it falls on our leaders to really help make our employees healthy. That really has impacted me, and I think it goes so much in the work that you're doing here.
Yeah, no, that statistic is so scary that, that managers have that big of an impact. And I think it's that research also says it's equal to that of their like significant other or partner,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah,
so more than a doctor and equal is to like the main partner in your life, which is just wild. And it just shows the responsibility that is on managers and leaders, even if they don't want it. Because what I also run into a lot is, hey, I wanted the promotion, I wanted more money, I wanted to take the next step in my career. So now I'm a manager for the first time, or now instead of leading a team of 5, I'm leading a department of 35.
yeah.
But hey, I don't really want to lead. I don't really want to manage the people part. And I get it. It's not for everybody and it's hard. But you have to accept that that is now the responsibility that you have. So find tools, seek out ways to make it easier for yourself. And again, at MotiveSmet, we have a lot of resources. We have the assessment, we have great stuff, but there are a ton of other people now too who are coming out with great stuff. So you really have to take that responsibility seriously because you have a huge impact on people's mental health and happiness at work. And one of, again, their biggest parts of their life.
I couldn't agree more. Like, if you're in that role, take responsibility and do it, or if you decide managing people isn't for you, it's okay to step outside of that role and do something else. But your
Absolutely.
people really deserve you to do one or the other.
Absolutely. They absolutely do.
Yeah. What if you're talking to the manager, because I think this is real, especially after COVID, and they're really just burnt out and they're struggling themselves due to burnout. They want to help other people. They want to be that manager, but sometimes that light in us can really dim or go out. Tell me a little bit about how you would coach those managers, because my guess is there's some out there that are listening.
Well, and really interesting and important part of stress and burnout at work is that it isn't just about being overworked. I think a lot of times we think of burnout or we think of just being really stressed as like, I have too much going on and not enough time to do those things. And that absolutely can be true. But what our research shows and other people's research also validates is that when needs are unmet, that's what leads to high stress and burnout. So, for example, I'll use myself as an example. Last week at work was kind of insane. I had all these fires happen at the same time, weeks before my book's coming out, and I was burnt out by the end of the week. And I had to ask myself why and do that internal coaching. And it wasn't just because I had to work a lot last week. Now, yes, I did. I was working late, I was working early. My bigger problem was that one of my most important needs, one of my top motives wasn't met, which is the future success motive. I want to be working towards my big goals and ambitions and my book launch. And the entire week, I was on defense, not offense with work. I was dealing with fires. I was dealing with people messing things up. I was dealing with unexpected things. So when your needs aren't met at work, that's what leads to a deeper sense of burnout. Someone we just did a workshop with shared a great story as well about how she was really struggling because she was working, from 8 to 6 every day, and she wasn't doing work she was passionate about. And so it wasn't just that, like, hey, I'm working outside of my work hours and occasionally on the weekend. It was like, I'm not working on stuff that I feel like is meaningful and impactful. And so that's really leading to all these negative emotions. That's really leading to this level of stress and burnout that I don't want to have. So as a leader, you have to look at your motives. Which of your motives are suffering and why is that? Because guaranteed that is what's causing your burnout. And it might be work life harmony. It could purely be, hey, I'm just working too much. And that could absolutely be true. But again, it could be deeper than that because sometimes we kind of use that, hey, I'm stressed. Hey, I'm burnt out at the surface level. And we don't go deeper to look at what are the stressors, what are the unmet needs that are really creating this. So having that ability to do that and go through that and then be able to look at your team and also see it from that lens is really important. And then I would say the second part is once you really realize the unmet needs that are driving this is you have to go, what am I going to do now? And you have to make change because it's not sustainable. You can get through it for a week. And I had to do it last week. That's life sometimes.
Yeah.
But I literally on Sunday went, okay, what am I taking off my plate this week? What deadlines am I pushing back because I lost some days? I had to restructure things so that it didn't continue because I didn't want to have another week where I was burnt out. And so you cannot sit there and say, oh, things are just going to magically change. I hear that a lot from people. It's tough right now, but it's going to get better. It's going to change. And it doesn't unless you make real actionable steps to make it change. So that second piece is you have to have that carefrontation with yourself, as I like to call it, and go, okay, maybe this is going to be tough. There are going to be tough choices for me to make. Maybe I need to go to my leader and tell him, I don't have the bandwidth for this anymore. Or, hey, me doing this executional work that isn't supposed to be in my role, that isn't helping me meet my need for passionate work. Hey, it's not gonna work in the long term.
Yeah. You know what? Even as you're talking, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about some of the things that in my role I do. They're very operational, very task oriented. And I don't love them because, again, it doesn't fall into the passion and purpose buckets. And if I could
Yep.
take those off, it would just make me happier. And I think a better overall leader in our company. So even as you're talking, it was just eye opening. So I love that you have those tools, and two, that they're really tactical because I think sometimes we get material or books that have big concepts and you think, okay, and you have to figure out how to apply that. But this is so great of like, these are my 5 things. What thing in there isn't being met? And what action can I take to either meet that or what needs to come off my plate, like you said, so I can meet that need?
I think that's so important when it comes to research in general, just given, again, I have such a heart for research, is there can be great insights out there, but if you don't make it actionable, it doesn't really help people in the way that it could. So I very much designed this book to be a book you do more even than a book you read. So I
Yeah.
take you as a reader down our pathway, which is 5 steps to understand, be mindful of, evaluate, communicate, and then ultimately be able to meet your motives. So there's the assessment, but then there's all these other tools, like you mentioned in there, to help you develop your action plan, to help you develop your motive story, which brings greater awareness to you. But that story is meant to be shared with others. When you share it with others, that's how you can get the support at work. That's how people get to know you better and can show up better for you. So, it's great to kind of have insights, or it's great to even know your top 5 motives, and that's valuable in and of itself. But it's more valuable when you really take the steps, when you really take the actions. And that's where a lot of the magic happens.
Yes. And so, Kelly, when they get the book, it comes out April 2nd. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did
Yeah.
did they get the assessment with the book?
Yes. So you get a free code to take the human needs assessment, which is a $20 value. So it's a great value to get the book, you get the assessment, you get your report. And then it's really cool because as you're going through the book, which I know you got to experience, you're doing it from your personal lens. Again, it's not a book where I'm just telling you, hey, these are three, purpose is it, or living your passion is it. And the book is just focused on that. No, the book is focused on you. It's everything is related to then your motives as you go through, which people have seemed to really love. The advanced readers who've read the book really love that.
Absolutely. Guys, you need to get the book, Work Life Well Lived. It's coming out. Kelly, thank you so much. You're doing amazing work that is really going to help employees and companies and leaders. And I just love it. So thank you.
Thank you. And I feel the same way about you.
Yeah. So tell us the best way before April 2nd to connect with you.
So my Instagram is Kelly Mackin _ motives met. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. You can go to motivesmet.com, which is our website. You can learn about the assessment. We have our book page on there. We have our resources. So that's a great way to connect with us too.
Okay. Great. And I will link all of those in the show notes. But thank you so much for taking time. I know it's a crazy busy time right before a book launch to do this. And I just appreciate you sharing these tools with us today.
Well, thank you, Anne. I appreciate you. And I love the work you're doing and your podcast. It's just fantastic.
Thank you. To all, thank you. If this would help someone you know, please share this episode. And always, it would mean the world to me if you would give it a 5-star review. Thanks for joining us today.